Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our monthly Ask the Doggy Experts Live. I am here again with Jessica and George, and we are excited to have you all here again this evening. We're going to just go ahead and give it a moment for a few of you all to log in and join us on our call here today. In the meantime, we have a quick intro question for you. Curious, how long do you walk or physically exercise your dog each day? Now, let's hear some truths here. How long do you walk or physically exercise your dog each day? Do you put a time limit on it? Do you put a mile limit on it? How is it that you plan your dog's exercise for the day? I'm curious to see what it is that people are doing for exercise. I know that there's been a lot of people here with new dogs and new schedules, and school went back this week. So I'm really curious to hear. I'm actually, you know what I really would like to see, folks, is if we have some teachers that are back into their school routine. I would love to hear from some teachers. So if we have any teachers that are on here, please send us a quick message and let us know you're a teacher. We'd love to pick your brain a little bit. But while we're waiting here, Jessica and George, we can start with ourselves here. Jessica, what do you normally do? How do you judge how much exercise to give your dog each day? Is it by minutes or is it by miles or?
Well, it's definitely not by mileage. Being that we have 3 dogs in the house, I kind of make everything more time-based or exercise-based. I don't have a lot of physical time to be able to always go and walk the dogs, balancing between the 3 dogs, my work schedule, my son and his virtual schooling now. So for me, it's more about getting the mental stimulation and the exercise in versus going off of distance. I know when I have a really long day at work, I will do lots of hard exercises with the dogs in the morning. So lots of mentally stimulating ones. So they are restful throughout the day when I am at work, and they can be nice and quiet when they're at home with my son.
That makes sense. Just out of curiosity, how do you, I know you said you like to do most of your exercise in the morning, but do you find that sometimes at nighttime that exercise is kind of worn off, and do you have a bewitching hour with your dogs where, like, I don't know, my house, it's like 7 to 8 o'clock at night. My dogs just get wacky, right? And they just want to goof off and run around and pretend like I don't exist. And
oh, absolutely. I think
one.
Yeah, no, it happens here too. I definitely try to pick and choose my battles, depending on how the dogs are acting. And so I might choose to rotate them in and out of their crates when I'm making dinner or helping my son with his homework. So I'm not overloading myself. So I think that self-perception is really important. Or we'll work on kind of like long down stays, or just I'll even employ my son to work some training exercises like place and heel, a lot of the mentally taxing exercises with the dogs. So I can get everybody. I have to control my household, because if my household's crazy, then I'm going crazy.
Well, that's a sign of a good leader there, Jessica. Going ahead and delegating the responsibility to your son. I love the mentality. I love the mindset. That's absolutely awesome. And we did get a comment from Jennifer Murphy Ward that she's a teacher. So Jennifer, if you're on here for a minute or two, I'm gonna pick your brain here a little bit, because I'm really curious to know how teachers are handling this time. George, what are your thoughts around, exercising dogs kind of on a daily basis? What's been your method to your madness over the last 40 years of exercising? I can't even talk here this evening. How many dogs in 40 years, George? A lot, right?
Yeah, it's current count, counting little old Buckshot. That's 54.
54 dogs over the last 40-something years. So there's been a lot of
it really depends on the the individual dog as to what I do. Like Raven, I let her out late in the morning, before I leave for work. Raven and Tater Tot and Buckshot, I take them out in the backyard, and then I tell Raven to mash the puppies, and she hassles all the other dogs and runs around. I get them all hot and tongues hanging out, and then I put them up and I go to work. So I don't, and I never have really. I could routinely tell students that I haven't walked a dog in the neighborhood in 35 years.
How funny is that?
I believe, well, I have my reasons as a trainer. The neighborhood walk to me is an uncontrollable gauntlet of distraction that you're just fighting through.
Yep.
So what I tend to do is I will work a dog, depending on his level of training, very intensely in what I'm trying to build, like retrieve work.
Yep.
I can run a dog 4 miles in my backyard,
There you go.
just doing retrieve work and recalls and stuff like that. So they get the legs moving. That's the important part, the heart rate and the legs moving. But quite frankly, when I moved into where I'm at, I had a third of an acre fenced off with 5-foot chain link for the dogs. And that's where they get most of their fuel burn. And everyone else will take them, but
George, I think it would be really funny if you shared what happened after you got that chain link fence installed.
We were just talking about that the other day. We were out sitting on the deck. So I moved into this house back in 2006. Literally, that day, I had this fence put up, 5-foot chain link fence, a third of an acre. The next morning, after the cement had dried, I let my dogs out, and my Doberman Tempest, who was a little hot rod, she was my little Ferrari. She walks up to the fence, stands in front of it, looks at it, and then jumps right over it. $5,000 and some odd dollars worth of fence. So the funny thing is, I'm standing over top of this yard because I'm on my deck. My deck's quite elevated, and I yell, "Get your blankety blank butt back over that fence." And she turns around and she jumps over the fence. And until the day she died, never did it again. She just had to know.
She had to give it a test.
Well, what impressed me most is she was a very small Doberman. She was only like, I had a hard time getting her to 50 pounds.
Mm.
And she stood in front of that fence, did a vertical leap and cleared it, never touched it. So that's a 5-foot vertical leap.
That's awesome.
Over the fence. She was
not
impressive.
Awesome. I shouldn't say that. That's not cool at all. Bad dog trainer, George. Bad dog trainer. Well, let's kind of dive into things. I'm glad to hear that we have a teacher on here, and any other teachers who are on here. We'd love it if you chimed in here this evening, because most of you have gone back to work in the past week or 2 weeks, and I know teachers are having a heck of a time right now, along with students, everybody's children that are going back to school. So I don't know. I just am kind of curious to hear how it's been going. What's life been like with your dogs at home trying to teach? I know some school systems are doing different things, so I don't really want to get into politics of the school system, if you will. But what I will say is that I know a lot of teachers have been put into a fairly challenging position trying to manage their own children while teaching. And then if you add a dog to that, that's quite complicated. So any teachers, we'd love to just hear some feedback. What are some of the challenges and struggles that you've been dealing with in the past week with your dog since going back to school? Have you seen any behavior changes with your dog? Are you finding that there's anything in particular that's a challenge for you? If there is, we would love it if you would just go ahead and throw it into the comments. And as we go through things, we'll hopefully be able to interact with you all a little bit on that, and maybe come up with some solutions to help make life easier. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of our real questions here. And of course, if you know somebody who has a dog that could use help, we would absolutely love it if you would just go ahead and share this with them and invite them to come and join us this evening. If they're not available, they can certainly come back and watch us later. But we'd love to make sure that we're helping as many people as there are that need it. So please make sure to share this with somebody. The first question that we have here is, my dog goes bonkers when someone shows up at the door. How should I handle this? And this is a very loaded question. It's a big question. There's a lot that we could talk about here. And so just to kind of, be cognizant of our time here, we'll just take a few minutes to kind of work through this. What I thought might make sense is, do you guys think it makes sense? Maybe we talk about what it is that we see people do wrong first. I think that might be a good idea. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because George and I know both of us spent a lot of times going to people's houses early on in our career. And so we saw a lot of things firsthand of how people handle their dogs at the door and what people do that's incorrect. I know from my perspective, and George, you can certainly add on to this, but some people who just flat out refuse to deal with their dog at the front door, and they just put their dog in the crate. And I wouldn't even say that that's the wrong thing to do, because in the right situation, you probably should crate your dog if you're unable to really manage the situation. But from, people who are just completely, I don't want to deal with it. They just lock the dog up, and the dog never learns how to deal with it. And then they're locking the dog up really for the next 12 years of its life every time somebody comes over to the house. To me, that seems stressful. It kind of takes the enjoyment. Like, I love watching my dogs get excited to see people. Like, I like that. Like, I like to see my dogs happy, and I like to see my dogs greeting people politely. But it seems to be a really stressful thing for almost everybody that I know that has a dog. So, George, what are some of the things that you've seen people do that are really detrimental at the front door that kind of hold them back?
Well, the first thing people tend to do is they make the front door an event zone. It's a party zone. When people come into the home, everybody's, hey, good to see you, hugging. The dogs pick up on that energy. And pretty soon the dogs generalize that foyer area, if you will, as this is a place of adrenaline. Okay? And then the yelling starts, no, get down. Well, that's just barking. That's just feeding into that adrenaline. So the dogs don't know what you're saying so much. And, so they just think this is party central and this is what we do. Well, that's the wrong thing to do, because dogs, they'll generalize to various situations. So this is a high adrenaline thing. This is what I do. I jump on grandma, knock her over, knock over the umbrella stand, and mom's going to yell at me, but it's fun because everybody's chasing me around, and it's a great thing. Or this is my house, and how dare you come in here, and I'm going to make you go away. Mm-hmm. So you got that side of it too, which is actually more dangerous. And I want to say something here. Everybody thinks their dog is guarding the house when they're doing that. Well, let me tell you how I'll get into your house. If your dog's doing that, charging the door, slamming on the door stuff, I'm going to open the door, and he's going to come out, and I'm going to sidestep him. I'm going to step in, close the door. Your dog's out in the yard, and I'm in your house. So that's not guarding anything. Okay? It doesn't chase anybody away. I did a prison program years ago and talked to these guys about and they just thought a barking dog at the door, that out of control dog, was ridiculous. They didn't even worry about it. They just let the dog chase them into a bedroom, and then they'd step outside the bedroom and close the door. So control at the door. Sit, stay, place, get back, etc.
Yep.
So,
yeah, there's it's almost comical sometimes from a dog trainer's perspective watching what happens there. Jessica, maybe you could kind of dive into a little bit about what are some of the things that people can be doing just to ultimately create a calmer, more relaxed greeting.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the best suggestions that we'll give students is to, if we can't control the dog via obedience, we have to have a way to be able to help the dog kind of cope with that moment. So whether that's having downtime in the crate or in the kennel during the arrivals and even the departures for that matter, having the dog on the leash and getting it calm, maybe doing the foot on the leash, the sit on the dog exercise, maybe having somebody else go answer the door, and I'm going to work it all in place and down and stay. But the biggest thing, Andrew, and this is something that you taught me very, very early on. I remember when I was going through my apprenticeship, I just thought it was gold when you told me that when you were doing your in-home lessons, you would take a sign printed out on just a piece of paper and have the owners put it up on their front door that said dog in training, don't look at, do not talk to, do not touch. So then they could be able to work the dog through that issue or the problems that they were having.
Yeah, and that's gold right there, Jessica. I'm glad you brought that up because, at the end of the day, our worst enemy at the front door is usually the guest that we're inviting into the house. It's a friend, it's a family member, it's a neighbor, it's somebody who we tend to like and appreciate, and their famous last words are, "Oh, I love the dog. It doesn't bother me. It's okay if he does X, Y, and Z." And as the person who's training that dog, you're like, hold on a second. This is a problem. Please stop. Yeah. So, but if you've got somebody who's essentially encouraging the behavior by looking at, talking to, or touching the dog, then yeah, 100%, that definitely just makes your job much, much more difficult. Much more difficult. I think that a really simple trick, most people probably don't take enough time to do, is when you have a dog that has a little bit of obedience control, we typically don't practice the front door. We typically just teach the behaviors. Like, we want you to sit. You can't sit and jump at the same time. But what I would really encourage people to do is to kind of start programming your dog by, if you have somebody who's out in your family, when they're on the way back to the house, and when they're about 5 minutes away from the house, have them send a message to you, a text message or even a phone call saying, "Hey, hon, I'm 5 minutes away from the house. Be ready with the dog." And when you pull back into your driveway, maybe you park on the street, or maybe you don't. Maybe you park in the driveway, whatever the case may be. Instead of just walking in the house, use that opportunity to go and ring the doorbell and practice that routine. Because I'll tell you what, folks, if you can't walk in the door and have the dog under control with you, somebody that they know, somebody that they probably had to listen to before, forget it with a guest. Like, you're just climbing a really steep hill. It all starts with us.
Right.
So start building the behavior when you come home every single day. Start teaching them, hey, there's a routine here. When somebody rings the doorbell, we sit you. And you sit in pretty much the same place every single time. And I think with most dogs, if you take the time to practice this and make it just part of your daily routine to, ring the doorbell 2 or 3 times during the day and run the dog through the same drill, they'll pretty much start anticipating it over time. I remember a time when George and I were doing a lesson at somebody's house, and we just trained the dog with it when they heard the doorbell to run and sit the stairs. I don't think we even taught a command to the dog. It was just ring the doorbell, and then that was our cue. And then it was put him on the stairs.
Right.
So I vaguely remember, this was a long time ago. I think what we were doing is I would ring the door. I was worthless. I was like 16 years old and didn't know much about training dogs. George was like, "What am I supposed to do with this kid? Like, just ring the doorbell or something?" And so I think I would ring the doorbell, and then they would place, and they would take the dog and put the dog on the stairs. And we just did that a number of times to where the dog was just running to the stair when they heard the doorbell. And I mean, how great is that when you're taking a delivery?
That's the Pavlovian model.
Yep.
So the dog associates the doorbell with an action for a desired consequence. It's very scientific, and it works.
Yeah, and one of the things that I don't know that we actually spend enough time on, and we might need to talk about this in another conversation, is using manners minders more at the door.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah,
that's a great tool. If you haven't checked it out, like, I would just tell you, go buy one. It's worth $100, $125. Treat and trains, manner minder, whatever you want to call it. I think those are great tools, and I think that's definitely something that people should be using with their dog, because a lot of the time at the door, the dog's not on the leash.
Right.
I mean, how often is the dog actually on the leash when somebody shows up in the house? It's almost never. And of course, you can put the dog on the leash, and maybe if you're at that point, you should be more proactive with the dog. But I would say in general, most people are not necessarily ready. They're caught with the pants down, and we need to find a way to work it. So having the manners minder could be great, because you can just maybe set that up somewhere and have your remote that's, Velcroed right next to the door handle.
Yeah.
It's always there. And anytime somebody comes up to the door, you reward the dog for running the opposite direction of the door. I mean, that's just, it's easy. And it's almost push button. You don't have to put a lot of thought into it. It doesn't require a lot of skill or technique to do, but it could certainly start teaching the dog the right thing, which is, instead of charging the door, maybe run away from the door and go to a different spot.
Yeah.
I think that's something. Anything else you guys want to add to that?
I think part of it, when we just talk about greeting behaviors with the dogs, making sure that they know, we preach it all the time, especially in the university program, teaching the dogs to sit, to say please, to be able to hold that sit while the greeting's occurring, or feeding, watering, opening up the doors, whatever it is. But thinking about being able to get the dog to just fully do that action. So I think there's a lot of good recommendations that we've all just mentioned for everybody that could be very helpful.
Yeah, it gives everybody a lot to think about. I mean, the door is one of these things too, where I find if you're not working at it constantly and regularly practicing it and maintaining it, it's very easy for dogs to go backwards, because they usually are getting some type of reinforcement for doing the wrong thing. And it may not be clearly apparent to us what that is. That's a really big thing to be able to figure out with your dog, is really to evaluate what is the reward that the dog is getting that's causing behavior to want to continue or maybe increase. And if we can reduce or eliminate that, that's usually going to make a huge difference there.
Yeah.
I want to say something else here too. A lot of people think this is just a pain in the neck sort of behavior. When I was the animal control warden down at College Park back in the 70s, most of the dead dogs we came across, the classic story was, well, he bolted out the front door when I opened it up to get the mail, or I opened it up to answer the door. He bolted out. Next thing, the dog's out in the street. And so it's a life-saving thing to teach that dog how to handle that front door. So look at it that way, and sometimes that'll light a fire under you a little more to get that dog trained and squared away about that doorway. That doorway should not be an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that you just said there, George, but you just triggered a memory of when you and I taught classes at PetSmart. And I remember that one of the things that I used to teach in all of my PetSmart classes was wait at the door.
Yep.
And we would set up 2 chairs side by side, and we would practice, having the dog wait and, doing body blocking between kind of the 2 chairs to start teaching the dog that that's a barrier. Maybe we could take a couple of minutes to just talk about like barrier training and threshold training. I mean, most of you that are in our world know that we are, fans of invisible fence. We think that it's a tool that can certainly be a life-saving tool, and it's certainly something that, allows you to kind of take your hands off of things a little bit more. But it's not for everybody. And so maybe we could take just a couple minutes to kind of dig into like, how should people be training their dogs at barriers to wait back away from them? I know that we teach it with puppy owners using kind of the say please exercise. But without going into that, maybe we could talk about some ways above and beyond the dog learning to sit to initiate a door open, and really how to get that dog to start waiting back away from that door.
Right. Well, I'll start. The dog wants to get through the door because he wants to get to something on the other side. Wants to get outside, wants to chase a bird, whatever. So if you look at it that way, that dog wants through that door. You can now look at that place in front of that dog, that door area and beyond, as a potential positive reinforcer. But the only way he can get to that positive reinforcer is by offering you the loose leash. So saying wait, which is what we tend to say here at DogiZone, wait, which means it's not stay, you're not moving, you're not leaving the dog, it's just wait. And then on command, let's go, they can cross. But if they bolt, they get checked, they're going to run out of leash, and we're going to bring them back. We're going to try that again. The only way you're getting out this door is by giving me that loose leash, and now you're outside where you wanted to be. So, again, I'm always, me, Andrew, I'm always going for the obedience. So wait means wait, and you'll get your reward if you proceed properly. So,
yep.
But outside is definitely a positive reinforcer, and sometimes more powerful than a treat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, one of the things that I do with my dogs is when I have them waiting at the door, so I wait for all my dogs to sit. My dogs are pretty on the saying please exercise. So when I get to a door, I just stand there. I don't say anything to them. At that point, I usually just take a deep breath. And within 5 seconds of me taking that deep breath, usually all my 4 dogs are sitting. But sitting to me doesn't open the door. Eye contact does.
Mm-hmm.
So I wait for my dog to sit and give me eye contact. And if they break eye contact and start to look at the door again, I close the door.
Yep.
So the action of looking at me and sitting opens the door. The action of looking away from me and maybe not sitting definitely closes the door.
Absolutely. Great exercise.
Yep.
Yeah, it gets the dog's mind off of what's on the other side of this door, because you may have them sitting, but if they're sitting and staring at the other side of the door, it's like it's that rubber band
Right.
that starts stretching and stretching and stretching, and eventually it's going to snap, and the dog's probably going to go.
And that's an exercise that anybody can do, but very few have the patience to do.
Mm.
Very few. If you're patient, you can teach this stuff pretty much hands-free. But everybody's got to get to work, got to walk the dog, and it's because they're running around too fast. Slow down.
Yep.
So take your time. If it takes 10 minutes to get out your front door, Andrew, I'm certain that you would take the 10 minutes.
Yeah, I did, quite honestly, for quite a while. Now it's, it's just easy. It just happens. I mean, but for me, I really like taking this deep breath. It's weird. I know. I like to take this deep breath before I open the door, and I am kind of relaxing myself and going, you know what? I just want to enjoy my time with my dogs. And this doesn't have to be a hassle, or this doesn't have to be annoying. I just want to enjoy you. I just want to see you make the right decision, and I'm going to take my time and relax. And if I need to help my dog because he's learning, then so be it. I should enjoy doing that. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be like a task. And I think that's part of it, is that a lot of times we think about training that it's like a laborious thing that we have to do, rather than something that we can easily just take the 2 to 3 to 5 or 6 seconds or even minutes that it would take to allow the dog to capture the right thing. So again, like George was absolutely correct. Sometimes we just have to slow down and take that time. And then you're gonna have the beauty of that relationship. And I think that's what sometimes we're missing out on, because we're trying to rush through the process of everything.
Yeah. Another thing too is that exercise in self-control that you're putting those dogs through tires them out. So when they come back from that walk, after exercising all that self-control, they're actually more zonked out than if you just ran out the door and ran 10 miles.
Yep.
You know, they really are. So them keeping themselves calm enough to get that door open is actually exhausting them. Tired dog is a good dog.
Well, I like you mentioned coming back because you should be doing the same drill going into the house, right? So whether it's going in or coming back, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe like when you start to teach this type of impulse control, because it's like a vacuum, right? When you get near an open door, the dogs just like, they just want to like shoot through it, right? For whatever reason. Stairs are also a similar type of situation. Dogs who are, fly up and down stairs. Practice there too. Having the dog sit, making them wait and look up at you, focus on you. Doing these types of things, I think that they really can carry over quite significantly into situations like just walking the dog through the neighborhood. Because the impulse for the dog to either go through the door, run up the stairs, to sniff dirt on the ground, or to run up to a person, they're all very similar. Even though they may appear at face value to be different, the bottom line is the dog has an urge to get a reward. And by teaching them to have this control, it's going to start to carry over into other scenarios. So I would encourage you, even if your dog is not having a problem with running through doors, maybe to take some time to just get that proper behavior of them sitting and looking up and focusing on you for that door to open up. I'm gonna move off of this one if you guys are cool with that. I think we hit on some really great stuff.
Yeah.
We have a few comments that came in here. Jennifer, thank you for commenting. And you had a question here, which is, how do you know when it's time to have your dog neutered, and are there certain behaviors to look for? And if it's okay, team, I'll start off on this one, and then if you all want to build upon that.
Sure.
There's been a lot of different opinions about when it's time to have your dog spayed or to have your dog neutered. And my caveat to this question here is just going to be that you really should speak to your veterinarian because every vet is going to have a slightly different perspective because they know your dog intimately well. And so hopefully, they're going to be able to really give you the most accurate recommendation for your dog. The philosophy that I've seen is that typically in the past, I would say 5 to 10 years, the recommendation has been to neuter or spay dogs around 6 months of age prior to their first heat. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of change around that. Me personally, my first dog that was really kind of my first training dog, I waited until she was closer to 1.5 years to spay her. And I did that because I was told that female dogs, if they're spayed before their first heat, they'll usually have a leaking issue when they get older. So I did that specifically because of that recommendation. And I learned that wasn't true because my dog went through heat and then was spayed, and she leaked horribly as an older dog. So I had to keep her on Pro-In, which is designed to help tone that bladder muscle and help them to not be dripping, if you will. But that's been kind of the older philosophy, if you will. What I'm starting to see more of from clients is that their doctors are telling them wait until closer to 1 year.
Right.
I think that looking at some of the studies that are out there around orthopedics and behavior, closer to 1 year is better than 6 months of age. And then there's the philosophy of waiting until their growth plates close, which might be closer to 18 months of age. I really think that it depends on the breed of the dog. I think it really depends on the behaviors as well. And I know that, Jennifer, you were really kind of asking about behaviors, but I just didn't feel like we're serving everybody if we only talk about behavior and not some of the other aspects here. So I'm going to turn it over to maybe George or Jessica, whoever wants to kind of answer on this. From a behavior perspective, what are some of the things that people can be looking for to anticipate that their dog has, it's starting to become more mature, maybe more independent, and let's build off of that a little bit.
Okay, want me to start?
Good.
I'm gonna bring this camera a little closer. I see it's dark. I mean, I'm sitting in the truck. So anyway, first of all, I'm gonna say this. This will be controversial. Spaying and neutering isn't a requirement. So there you go. What I look for when I decide to neuter a male, if I choose to neuter a male dog that I'm raising, I'm looking for secondary male pattern behaviors that are undesirable. Acting tough, picking on dogs, acting, for lack of better words, dominant. So that's where I shut them down, if they even show that. I don't arbitrarily neuter my own dogs. I adopt a lot of dogs, so a lot of them are spayed and neutered when I get them, and I'm okay with that. It's just if I have a specialty dog, I might leave them intact, at least until they're well into adulthood. Females, I'm not a big fan. If I'm not breeding, I'm not a big fan of dealing with heat and stuff, but I will let their first heat go, but let them have that. I want those hormones to do what they're supposed to do as far as the physical development of the dog and also the behavioral development of the dog. So that's where I'm at. Sometimes that's an unpopular, viewpoint, but it's mine.
Fair enough. Jess, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm in agreement with some of the stuff that you mentioned, Andrew, and that George mentioned. If there's a behavior that's creeping with a dog, like I'll say Buckshot's still intact. He just turned 3 over the summer. I haven't had any necessarily behavioral concerns with him. In terms that I don't think that I would be able to handle as a professional trainer. It's just one of those things that we just haven't gotten around to doing. But there's nothing that I'm seeing in him that to where I would warrant that. Now, if I brought another male dog into the house, I would definitely consider that as a first. We were potentially going to be bringing home a little black lab male puppy. We had the potential to do it over the summer. So that was a conversation topic of maybe it's time to go ahead and get that taken care of with Buck. So then we're making sure to manage the household and the behavior a little bit. So that's just where my heart stands with it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. One of the myths that's out there is that when you spay or neuter a dog, that they get fat afterwards. I don't buy it. I just think that usually what happens is the dog's exercise level is usually decreasing and the calorie intake is usually probably higher than it's supposed to be. But folks, I'll tell you, we see a lot of dogs come through our facility that are overweight, and it's painful for us. It's painful because we know what kind of impact and wear and tear that has on dogs. So I always encourage people to, take great care of their dog's weight. And I actually think we had a question around that we may dive into later. So I'll stop there for right now. But I think we had another question come in here from Jennifer, and see if we can maybe help Jennifer out. So Armstrong's bird dog genetics came out at the beach this weekend. He was able to sit while doing his war cries and quivering. He took 15 minutes before he would give me eye contact again. And then we played, look at that. Then he was able to loose lead walk away from it. any other suggestions for working through that high prey drive? Would either of you like to try to answer this?
Yeah, I'll answer it. I wouldn't have let him soak in that. There's a certain point, I call it situational tipping point, where you lose the dog. He's no longer present. It sounds like Armstrong was in that place when that bird was there. I'd retreat and get his brain back and get back into the work. It's too much. He's getting to sit there, what'd she say, 15 minutes? 15 minutes of practicing adrenaline and being totally hyper-focused on the wrong thing. So I wouldn't have sat there for that. I wouldn't correct him either. I'd just retreat. Come on, man, let's go this way. Turn him around and go on. Get him out of it. Because you're not training there. You're not training. You're just surviving the moment. If you'd have let go of that leash or that leash would have broke, he's gone. He's dead all gone. So you're not doing any training, just sitting there letting him burn it out. And unfortunately, I see a lot of trainers that will do that, get those dogs into that hyper focus, and then spend quite a long time yanking and cranking trying to get through to the dog. Well, it doesn't work. A famous quote of mine is, you don't take a drunk to a bar and try to convince him to stop drinking. Yep. You don't take a bicycle crazy dog to the starting line of the Tour de France. It's too much. You're not teaching anything. And I'm always about the teaching in the moment. So I'm going to hook a hard, about turn, say, come on, dog, and take his head with me. I assure you, if you take his head with you, his butt will follow, and get him out of that. And then train him when you get his brain back.
That's great. That's great. Hopefully you find that helpful, Jennifer. Certainly working through those high drive situations can be challenging. What I would be looking to do is also, find, is there ways that you can put him back into that scenario? So you can put him in it, take him out of it, put him in it, take him out of it. It's people have to, well, I shouldn't say people have to, but one of the things that I've focused on myself personally is, how do I change my emotional state? It's really easy to end up, and I think you all probably know what I'm talking about, right? Like you're in a situation, something happened, with a friend or family or work or whatever the case may be, and you just are in like a sour place. And it's like anything that somebody says to you just like annoys the shit out of you. But yet, like, it really was not necessary at all. And so one of the things that, like, I've found is, like, I have to really be good at managing my own emotional state. I need to be able to flip a switch and go from frustrated to, okay, I got to go deal and I got to work with somebody, or I've got to go work with a team member. And the previous state that I was in is not going to serve me there. I think that it's very similar with dogs. The more that we can practice flipping them back and forth, the stronger they get at it, the easier it becomes for them. But if they only get put into that state where they're, really in high drive once in a blue moon, it's always going to be challenging. So I would do what you can to really kind of find ways to set up, how do I put my dog into high drive and work through it? And you got to find that way. I don't know what the solution is for you, Jennifer, but I would just encourage you to maybe put some thought into how you might be able to set up that scenario. And that's really what it is that makes training in the moment challenging, is people not having practiced working through it separately. So if you do this exercise separately, then when you have to train in the moment, it's no big deal. George, what were you going to say?
Yeah. I have something to add to that. I actually have a procedure to do that. It's a little lengthy to go into here. But if Jennifer will contact me, through DogiZone, I'll call her because I talk faster than I type. I'll explain it. I can explain the concept to her right over the phone on how to really get that handled. Because give me a week, I can take that bicycle crazy dog down to the starting line and have him do full obedience if you follow this procedure. Right. It's just, again, it's a little drawn out to go into in this forum.
Yeah. Well, look, we are coming up to the very end of our time here, and it went by really quickly tonight. We had more questions to go through, but I wanted to make sure that we, got our live viewers' questions answered. So for those of you that provided some questions to us, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate every single one of you who are jumping on here. We feel super honored to have every single person spend their time with us. I mean, and I'm not just saying that, like, we started this whole thing because of COVID, and we kind of agreed that it was something, if we're going to do it, we're going to keep doing it. It's not just something we're going to do during COVID. And so although there may not be as many of you wanting to sit in front of your screen now because you have other options available to you, we get it. Some of you are showing up to class now. Some of you guys are in lessons with us, and so jumping on here maybe isn't your number one priority. But we really do appreciate every single one of you. And whether you're a client or not a client in Maryland or in Yugoslavia, it really doesn't matter. We're just honored to have anybody that's able to join us. We have some really, really exciting stuff in the works. Now, I got to watch myself here.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
I know.
Just tell them to stay tuned. Same
I know.
channel.
I won't tell them. I was gonna maybe share like a little bit about it, but I won't do it. I will have to wait. But for those of you that are in the DogiZone training world or are thinking about coming into the DogiZone training world, I can promise you it would be a great decision for you. You will not be disappointed. And if you are, we will surely make it right for you so that you're not disappointed. But we have some really exciting things coming. You'll see them very soon. You will see it very soon. It won't be something that you have to hear about. You will see it for yourself. So we're looking forward to our next call, be about a month out. Yeah, Jessica, George, thank you both for jumping on. And yeah, I hope that everybody has a better than great evening.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.